In phase two, I think you can up it up to 40 grams after you get your blood sugars leveled into the levels that you want them to be, which is 70 to 90 fasted in the morning. And one thing that I was going to say is like, um, if you can find like 5 or 6 meals or foods that you like you don't have to necessarily have a huge variety. Like bears eat berries, right? And a few other things, but find like 5 or 6 foods that you like, whether it's maybe it's a certain type of meat, maybe like chicken or steak or fish, and maybe it's a few different types of vegetables, and you make a stir fry together. And spices, you can add some salt and pepper and some garlic and things like that. And here we go. Welcome, 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 everybody. I'm your host, Leslie Prinz. I got a haircut.
You sure did. You look different with a haircut.
Yeah, I thought I'd try something new. Just kidding. Leslie's on vacation this week, so here we are. You're gonna have to suffer through with me as your host, and Dr. Saunders, thankfully, will save the day because he's always on top of his game. So welcome everyone. Say hello in the chat. And if you're watching this on YouTube in the future from now, which would be in your present still, go to go to bartonwebinar.com and register so you can join us. And if anyone is watching us live, you could also go to bartonwebinar.com as kind of like a sidekick website to be on in case we mention any products that you might be interested in. And we'll say from the beginning, you can get 25% off when you use the coupon code. Dr. Saunders, do you remember it? We've probably said it 380 times.
Webinar 25.
Bam, there you go. Yes, sir. Save 25% off.
Yeah, I had a patient in my office an hour ago, and his alarm went off, and he looked up. He goes, "Oh, the webinar starts in an hour."
Nice. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're glad to have you joining us today. If you're a first-time viewer, special welcome to you. Say hello in the chat. And Dr. Saunders, I'm going to just hand things over to you because you're going to tell us what can a type 2 diabetic eat and other good stuff.
Okay, so first of all, let's begin we begin each webinar by saying that I'm not your doctor, and I'm giving general information that may apply to you, but may not apply to you. So make sure that you discuss before you make any changes. Discuss it with your healthcare practitioner, or make sure it applies to you properly. Okay, so today we're talking about food, and it's about eating. And why is this important? Because that's what this is all about. The whole thing that we're talking about in type 2 is about food. And last time I told you about hummingbirds and bears and how they get type 2. A hummingbird gets type 2 every single night. They come home with fatty liver, obesity, and insulin resistance. And then they have such a fast metabolism that by the morning time, they've used all that up, and they have to go out and find some more sugar to eat, right? And so they're eating pure sugar, and then they come home that night with fatty liver, obesity, and insulin resistance, and then they do it all over again every single day. And that's a hummingbird. But you know what? Hummingbirds don't live very long, so I wouldn't say that is a good plan for a human being. So what about a bear? Bears, same kind of thing. During part of the year, bears live on meat. And then they'll eat fish and whatever animals they catch and eat. And then when the berries come ripe late in the year, then they'll eat hundreds of thousands of berries. And they will get insulin resistance, type 2, insulin resistance, and fatty liver and obesity And then what happens from that is they make less ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, and it is the currency of energy in your body. That's what the energy is. That's the dollar bills. That's what's bringing your energy from the mitochondria to the cells. That's what's making everything work. That's the currency. And when you have type 2, when a bear has type 2, when a hummingbird has type 2, they have less energy. So if you've ever felt like you have less energy, then it may be because you have type 2 or insulin resistance. So if it's all about what the hummingbird eats and all about what the bear eats, then consider the fact that human beings have the same essential mechanism. The biochemistry isn't different between the hummingbird and the bear and the human. So that the liver does the same thing in a bear as it does in a human. And the insulin does exactly the same thing in a bear as it does a human and a bird. So here's the deal. If you're like a hummingbird and you live on sugar, you are going to get what we call toxicity or insulin resistance. But then you have to kind of do what they do, and that is use it up. And so the problem in the human realm is not that we get it, it's that we continuously get it, that there's no end to getting it. And for the bear, he gets to sleep for 2 or 3 months, right? And use it all up. And he doesn't eat anything. He fasts for between 2 and 3 months. So if you want to fast between 2 and 3 months, wow, you can do the same thing. Like engorge yourself on berries all you want, and then fast for 2 or 3 months and use it all up, and then you're good. So we've talked about that. You could do fasting. That is one way of handling this. We have put together a program to make it palatable, right? So this is something that like everybody could do. Like not everybody can just stop eating for months. So what's your other option? Well, the other option is to kind of do what the bear does, and the bear lives on meat for a while, has no berries at all, lives on meat for a while, and builds up his protein, and doesn't have any insulin resistance at all, and that's kind of how the bear does it. So we've put together a program called the Diabetes Solution Kit, where you have a 20-gram carbohydrate diet. Now, 20 grams is not a lot. A slice of bread or 1 orange or 1 apple, and that's it for the day. As far as that's all the carbs you get. That means nothing else. No other types of carbs or sugars or pastas or rice or corn or anything like that. So then what do you eat? That's where we are today. That's our question today. What can I eat? Well, for heaven's sakes, we have a book on it, and it's a wonderful book, and it talks about the free foods. What are free foods? Well, you can have all the green beans you want. You can have all the broccoli you want. You can have all the spinach you want, and lettuce and celery. And there's this whole list of foods. I think avocados are on that list too. You have this big, long list of foods that you can eat as much as you want. And that's all good stuff. That's free food. And that's fiber high. They're generally high fiber, low carb kinds of foods like broccoli and cauliflower, right? So that's, you can eat all of that stuff and eat as much of it as you want. You don't have to like say, well, I can only eat this one little low calorie meatball. You don't have to starve. And that's why we put it in, that's why we made this program, is so people would have a way of getting rid of the fatty liver, getting rid of the excess fat, getting rid of the insulin resistance, without having to go without eating for 3 months, right? So the other things that you can eat are, of course, just you can have fish. And you know what? It turns out fish is really good. for a lot of different things. I know fish has mercury. I think I told you the story about the mercury in the fish. I had a patient that we tested. We just sent in a bunch of tests. It was just a big bunch of tests. He wasn't having any big issues. And the lab called me a few days later and said, we've got a panic value. And I'm like, oh, what is it? He said, is this patient still alive? And I'm like, well, probably. I don't know. He seemed to be okay before. And they told me who it was, and then that his mercury level was 50 times the upper limit of normal. So like he wasn't just toxic, he was 50 times toxic. And they expected him to be on death's door any minute. So I called him. I said, how you doing? Fine. Where are you? I'm out in the channel. He's out on a boat in the channel fishing, pulling in. And what he fishes for is swordfish. And he pulls in a swordfish, and he's got it all put in an ice pack before they even get to land, to shore. And then he puts that in his freezer, and that's what he eats. He eats a lot of swordfish. So his omega-3 to omega-6 ratio was awesome. But his mercury level was really, really high. So I said, maybe you shouldn't eat that much swordfish. And then if you do, make sure you put a lot of cilantro, and I would even take chlorella tablets with it, capsules, to hold on to the mercury so you don't absorb it. Anyway, so the point being that his toxicity technically was super high, but it didn't affect him at all. So, I think I still recommend people eat fish. And if you eat the low mercury fish, swordfish is the high mercury fish, whereas something like salmon is kind of moderate to low. Sardines, very low. Mackerel, very low. So there are a lot of fish that have very low mercury levels and very high omega-3 levels. So you can have fish, and you can have like salmon salad, and you can make up all these things. We even have some recipes in there. And you can have meat, and people say, oh, saturated fat is bad for you, that you shouldn't eat meat. Well, whoever said saturated fat is bad for you? They're actually, look at the research and you go, where's the bad for you thing? The rabbits, having a lot of saturated fats. Rabbits don't tolerate saturated fat. You know why? Because they're herbivores, and they're true herbivores. A cat, for example, if they did a saturated fat study on a cat, it wouldn't work. They would love it and tolerate it and use it up, and it would be really good. It's good for you. And all of the fats that we make in our bodies are saturated fats and omega-9s. That's all we make. That's why we have to have omega-3 and omega-6. We have to eat them. If we don't eat them, then we don't have them. If we don't have them, then we won't make some important things for the body, especially for the immune system. So saturated fat's okay, especially if you're not eating sugar. So something like ice cream would be the worst thing a human being could eat. Why? Because it's like saturated fat and sugar put together and nothing else. Pizza's the second worst thing to eat. Why? A lot of saturated fat, a lot of sugar, and pretty much nothing else. I don't know, they sprinkle some cilantro on it or something. But so what you can eat on this is any kind of meats, any kind of vegetables. You can have tomatoes, anything that's low carb, and all you're doing is counting carbs. That's all. You're detoxing from carbohydrates. Everything else is fair game. But we do have some recommendations in the book, and that is, if you've heard of the 6-10 reset, don't eat after 6 o'clock and go to sleep by 10 o'clock. That way you repair your body. And if you think about all of the damage that you've done over the years, you want to do that repair. And that's called the anabolic metabolism. And it doesn't happen if you eat at night or if you go to sleep late after 10 o'clock. So that's all of the stuff that you can eat.
Good stuff. If you have the the hard copy of the diabetes solution kit, which is right here. You can turn to the very back and we have that grocery list. And yeah, there's a lot of different meats and vegetables and a little bit of fruits in there that you can pretty much have your way with. So it's really a keto diet. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
50 grams of
that's what
carbs.
it is.
That's phase one. And then phase two, I think you can up to 40 grams after you get your blood sugars leveled into the levels that you want them to be, which is 70 to 90 fasted in the morning. And one thing that I was going to say is like, um, if you can find like 5 or 6 meals or foods that you like you don't have to necessarily have a huge variety. You know, like bears eat berries, right? And a few other things, but like, find like 5 or 6 foods that you like, whether it's maybe it's, a certain type of meat, maybe like chicken or steak or fish, and maybe it's a few different types of vegetables, and you make a stir fry together. And spices, you can add some salt and pepper and some garlic and things like that, and have a really tasty meal. And do that, just repeat it and find what you like and keep doing it.
That's a really good point. The idea that we have to have variety, and over time, yes, variety is a good thing. Um, but but while the bear is eating fish, then it doesn't eat other things like berries. It doesn't. The bears don't have a well-rounded meal and go, I need to go get some bread to put with my meat. They don't mix carbs and fats. They eat a lot of fat, and that's pretty much what they live on. And then they eat a lot of sugar. Then that's pretty much what they live on. Whereas hummingbirds just eat sugar and nothing else. They don't have any fat. And so it turns out that if you look at foods and you look at natural foods, in no case do you find a high fat, high carb food. You think like nuts, they have fats in them, but the fatty nuts are not high in carbs. Like walnuts don't have a lot of carbs in them. And the high carb nuts don't have a lot of fat in them, like cashews don't have a lot of fat. So an exception might be a roughly equivalent would be macadamia nuts, but they have a lot of fat with less carbs. Anyway, the point being that in nature, you're not putting fat and carbs together. And so essentially what we've done in this is we're trying to separate this out. And then as you go into phase two, consider this as a possibility. We've talked about this a lot on various webinars as having a day of ketogenic diet. Like this is the day that I have meat and vegetables. And then other days when you have fruit, vegetables, and carbs and rice and corn. And on that day, you don't have any fat with your meals. And on this day, you have protein and fat, but you don't have any carbs with your meals. And if you do that on a daily, but why daily basis? Why not just different meals? Well, because when somebody eats fat, they're going to be insulin resistant for about 8 hours, what the research seems to show. So if you separate them out, you may find that you tolerate a lot more carbs than you thought you did. Like that woman that I was telling you about before that could tolerate bread. She ate bread and she had a continuous glucose monitor, and the monitor was like stable, like good, right around 100. But then when she ate nachos, it shot up over 200. And she said, I don't know why the nachos. Well, what you got in there? You got, tortilla chips, which are carbs and fat, and then beans, which are carbs, not a lot of fat. And so you have this fat carb combination is where a lot of the problem is. So consider that when you're going into phase two of having a carb day and a fat day, and don't mix them.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I was talking to somebody yesterday that referenced the I think it's Integrative Functional Medicine Association or something, but they basically say eat the rainbow of phytonutrients. Have you heard of that? Is that in
Yeah.
your world? Yeah. And like there's different foods like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and white, and then kind of the healthy foods to eat. But that's great, but you also got to be careful with the carbs when we're on phase one for sure. But so it is probably best to try to eat like a variety, get that. If you got a stir fry going, try to get that rainbow of colors in there. So
Makes it look better too.
it does. Yeah. All right, I've got a few questions that have come in. Thanks, everybody. Put those questions in the Q&A, and we're going to get rolling in there right now, and also in the chat. If you want to share any wins or losses from this week, I'd love to hear that. And Rainey shared that she had a good week or a good time in India and did really well, but then she had the rebound effect coming home and ate a lot of sugar. So I'm wondering if India just has less sugar options compared to back in the USA here, which is probably the case. It's harder to eat healthy when you're surrounded by junk foods, basically. So, yeah. Okay, number one question. All right, Johnson is taking Synachroma and he's wondering if he can combine berberine together with the other supplements, turmeric, Synachroma, Nervala, and the magnesium. Any issues there?
Absolutely no. That, in fact, we have formulated things so that they fit together very nicely. The Synachroma, people often ask us, well, how come you use cinnamon instead of berberine? Because berberine you can replace metformin, but with the cinnamon doesn't. Well, because the cinnamon helps it be more insulin sensitive. That's what it works. Berberine works in a totally different way. But berberine also has a lot of other benefits, like it's good for people to prevent cancer. It's good for people who have cancer who want to get rid of it. Can I say that? Anyway, I know we're getting a lot of censorship lately, so I'm not sure what I can say and what I can't say. Anyway, so they're different things and they work in different ways. And so each of them is formulated so that you can actually take them all together if you need them. And so some people are not going to need Nervala, and some people are. And so that's why we didn't put it all in the same formula. Some people are going to want berberine for a different reason. They don't want to take it with cinnamon and selenium and all that. So yes, all of those, they go together very nicely.
All right. Our friend Beverly Bell said, I think I heard Dr. Saunders say not to take fiber greens while on the detox protocol. Is that right?
That's right. Okay, so as more research comes in, it turns out that the artificial sweeteners do affect most people's blood sugar. Not everybody, but most people with insulin resistance, artificial sweeteners do that. And the fiber greens has stevia in it. And so that's why.
All right. Brian, I seem to be stuck. My fasting number is from 10 to 8 in the morning, but is in the teens through the day. I'm guessing maybe this is Canadian or non-US numbers. No matter what I eat or don't eat, I stopped taking metformin in January and started Synachroma. He's stuck.
Okay. If you're stuck, and that's pretty high, if you're getting up in the teens, that's pretty high. So the equivalent would be you'd be over 200 in the United States levels. So what that means is you're stuck at a pretty high level, which means you have a lot of insulin resistance or you're not making enough insulin. So your next step is to test and do the all 4 tests on the same blood so that you can evaluate the levels. So you do a hemoglobin A1C, a glucose, a C-peptide, and an insulin level. You do all 4 of those tests on one blood sample. And what that does is that tells you that you have a long-term and a short-term blood sugar and a long-term and a short-term insulin. And so that tells you how your pancreas is functioning. So do that.
All right. Deanna said she followed the low carb diet and workout and lost 23 pounds in 2 months. Woo! Great
Two
job.
months. Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's awesome. All right. Stephen Smith, instead of 6:10 reset, can I stop eating at 8 o'clock and go to bed at midnight and wake up later in the morning?
Great question. Great question. This has been studied extensively. So if you read the book Circadian Code by Sachin Panda, and long before he wrote the book, he'd been doing a lot of research on it. And you know what? This is fixed. This is not an option. You cannot go to bed at midnight and expect to be anabolic. You will not be anabolic. They've done research on people that do shift work, and it's called, they have shift worker syndrome, night worker syndrome. And what all of the syndrome is they're not getting anabolic. They're not repairing their body. They're breaking down everything over time, and they're not getting repaired every night. If you eat late and go to bed late, you don't repair. So that's all. You just miss that day of repair, and so you can make it up the next day. What by what? By going to bed with an empty stomach by 10 o'clock at night. The more you do that, the more you repair your body, and the better you feel, the more energy you have, and the less likely you are to have joint replacement surgeries, and the degenerative diseases and all the diseases of aging, we call it. You don't age if you repair every night. It's really amazing.
Yeah. All right. We have a few questions that involve fat. What about cheese? Does it have a lot of saturated fat?
Some cheeses are high in fat and some are not. It depends on the cheese. So if you got, there are specifically low fat cheeses. The cheese is primarily the protein, is what makes up the cheese. But some cheeses are really fatty cheeses like brie, and actually American cheese is quite fatty, and the soft cheeses tend to be more fatty. The hard cheeses tend to have less fat in them, the aged cheeses.
I would like to say I love cheeses, but not as much as I love Jesus. Oh, but don't. All right. Sorry, everybody. That was a little cheesy. Oh, he's on a roll.
That was really cheesy.
All right. Should the beef that we eat be grass-fed to cut down on the omega-6?
Okay, that's a good question. So if you have grain-fed beef, most beef is grass-fed through its life, and then before they go to slaughter, they have a feedlot, and they kind of stuff them full of corn, and so their omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is about 10 to 1. Whereas if it's all grass-fed and never corn-fed, it's about 4 to 1. So it does make a difference. It does. It's for the omega-3, omega-6 ratio, the grass-fed beef is a better choice.
All right. Let's see. Beverly, given the discussion of fats and carbs, what do you say about the Krebs cycle, which appears to balance them?
Okay, so what she's referring to is the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, and that's how the energy is made, or how that ATP is made. And so you can put fat into the Krebs cycle, or you can put sugar into the Krebs cycle. Either way, you're going to get the ATP being produced, whether you're putting fat in or carbohydrates in. And so the Krebs cycle part is not the issue. It is before that is how you get the sugar into the cells and how you get the fat into the cells, and which mechanisms are being used to create this this citric acid from the fat or from the carbohydrate. And so if it's from fat, it's a different mechanism than if it's from carbohydrate, from glucose. So for example, if you eat fat, you don't raise insulin levels very much, just very little. Whereas if you eat carbohydrates, you raise insulin levels a lot. And that tells your body, don't use fat for energy. It shuts down. the fat going into the Krebs cycle. So you get high triglycerides. So if you've measured your triglycerides and they're high, that's because you're not putting fat into the Krebs cycle. You're not getting energy out of it, and that's why you have lower ATP and lower energy. So that's the way the system works is not the Krebs cycle specifically. It's before that. It's what's going into that system, the mitochondria.
All right. Judy said she's a little confused about the 60-40 thing. I thought you said to eat fat for energy, and you said something else about energy that you can't remember. I don't know if that rings a bell for you.
Yeah. Okay. So 60-40. A normal person burns 60% of their energy comes from fat and 40% comes from sugar. Okay, that's a normal metabolism. What happens with diabetes is you get insulin resistance, and the high levels of insulin stop you from using fat for energy. They tell the cells don't use fat for energy. So you have limited your available energy now because you have less fat for energy. You have a lot of carbohydrates, but remember, you're insulin resistant and you can't get those into the cells that need them because the cells have all blocked it off. So now you have high blood sugar, but you're only using about the same amount of sugar and fat for energy, and you make less ATP. So the confusion is, why do you have less energy? Because you don't have the basis, the metabolic basis of fat for energy. You actually can burn less, so you actually make less energy, even though you have all this energy around. You have extra fat on your body and you have high blood sugar, and you should be like having tons of energy, and these the insulin is blocking that from happening. So insulin, you don't want insulin in your body. Eating fewer meals is a way to get the insulin down. Avoiding carbs is another way to get the insulin down. And that's what we're talking about here. Fast at every night. That is the best thing you could do. Why? Because the insulin drops down. And then you can start using fat for energy, like the hummingbird and the bear.
Good stuff. All right. Tom said he did an 83-hour fast from after Friday dinner to Tuesday breakfast. His fasting blood sugar was in the 110s before the fast, and following the fast it was 83. But this morning it's back up to 109. So he's wondering if he's still insulin resistant.
This morning fasting 109, yes, you're still insulin resistant. So 4-day fast, wonderful. That's great. So wait a little while, a couple weeks or whatever next month, and do it again. And do it again until your blood sugar is, your fasting blood sugar is between 70 and 90. So that's what you had, it was 83 during those 4 days that you're fasting. And so that's because you weren't taking anything in. You're still insulin resistant, but you just didn't take anything in. So there's another thing you can do is, if you exercise while you're fasting, it uses up the glycogen and all of the excess, and actually improves your insulin sensitivity dramatically more.
All right. Linda asks, what is the recommended number of fruits to eat per day since they have sugar?
Okay. Well, it depends on what fruit. You have some free fruits if you're eating peppers and cucumbers and avocados. Then have, I don't know, 1 or 2 a day or whatever. If you're eating apples and oranges and bananas and pears, then you have to count that in your carb count. So if you wouldn't even get a whole pear, definitely not a whole pineapple. You would get like 1 apple, and that's it. That's all you get for the whole day, kind of thing. So yeah, just count it.
What about berries?
For same thing
Yeah.
with berries, just count it. So
Yeah.
so I mentioned the free fruits, and then all of the ones that contain sugars should be counted in your 20 grams.
All right. Can you talk about allulose?
Yes. Allulose is a form. It's a sugar that we don't process very well. Um, it's not okay to use because it's going to raise the insulin levels, but without it's going to make you more insulin resistant.
All right. John has a request that we make a healthy protein bar with low carbs that's affordable.
Okay. Whenever you look at bars, especially like protein bars and all of those kind of things, that's junk food. Just always look at anything that's like in a package, it's junk food. Why? It's processed. What you want is something that's not processed. So if you want to take something with you that is going to be okay on your diet and something you can take with you, take a handful of nuts. I usually just take some nuts in a bag or something. Currently I have almonds and macadamia nuts. Sometimes I use walnuts or pecans. I love pecans. And so if I'm going somewhere, or you can just not eat. That's actually in some ways a better option. Is to just say, well, I'm going to be out, and so I'm not going to eat. I'll eat when I get home. Or if I'm going to get home late, then I'll eat tomorrow morning, and that's okay too.
All right. Lynn just came off a 72-hour fast and feels wonderful. Is it safe to extend the fast if there are no problems? And how often is okay to do a fast?
You guys are awesome. I'm so proud of you. That is really 72 hours. We've had 2 people do more than 3 days. Yes. Okay. So, yes, I generally do 3 days once a month because I don't want to lose weight, so I'm not looking for weight loss or anything like that. And I do like fruit, so I eat a lot of fruit. Fruit has a lot of fructose in it, and so you have to go off it for a while, and you have to stop eating for a while, like the hummingbird and the bear, right? You have to stop eating for a while to use it all up. And then you can start eating again, and that's a good thing. So it's okay to go through that cycle of gaining weight, losing weight. They used to call it yo-yo dieting. Oh, it's really bad for you. It turns out it's really good for you. So if you want to fast 3 days once a month, like I do, that's great. If you want to fast every day, have a 16-hour fast every day, you can do that. I have somebody that has arthritis. He has a type of arthritis Reiter syndrome. And as he fasts 10 days once a year, it's not exactly a year, but every time he starts getting real stiff and everything, he fasts for 10 days, and that goes away. So it's highly variable. And so the way I judge it is by weight. That's how I judge it. So if I drop below 50 pounds, 150 pounds, then I start eating again. And so if I fast for 7 days, for example, with just water, then I have gone into the 140s. But I try to keep my weight around 155. And so I work out during a fast too. But you can do it like whatever works for you, whatever fits your lifestyle. And having an empty stomach at night is the key. So if you have one meal a day, but you're only eating at night, you're not going to get the benefits of fasting like you would if you ate one meal in the morning, even if it's the same number of calories. So keeping the timing right, and then fasting as much as you want, and just maintain your ideal body weight.
All right. Very good. Ronnie, who I mispronounced earlier, is I got it right now. Ronnie, so is the 610 reset based on location of the sun or what?
Yes, actually it does. It comes from the sun ultimately. So if you were to travel to China and go, okay, I'm 12 hours off, so I'm going to work nights in China. Guess what? Within 2 weeks, you're going to be on China time. your circadian rhythm clock is going to be on China time, and you will not get anabolic anymore. It's the way things work, and NASA's done a whole bunch of research for this for the space station. How are we going to manage this? They don't have a sun up and sundown. So they have to use diet. Diet is actually a good way of maintaining that. And then they have to have sun lamps, full spectrum lighting for the astronauts during the day, and then shut everything down at night. Like they can't even have the little indicator lights and beepers and all that stuff. They have to like shut it black at night, and they have to do that so that the astronauts will have a circadian rhythm. It's not negotiable. They first started. They put people in caves. I think the first researchers put themselves in a deep in a cave, and after they spent a lot of time there, their circadian rhythm, their days got longer and longer. So they were awake 24 hours and then asleep 12 hours and then awake for 24 hours and sleep for 12 hours. And that, but they did not get anabolic. And that's the key. What you want is to become anabolic. And so sticking to that, a very hard line, go to bed every day at the same time, 10 o'clock is very good for you.
All right. Still have 25 questions here, and I'm sure more will be asked. So just a note, if you don't get your question answered today, we do have over 200 episodes recorded and on our YouTube channel, which you can find. You can either go to YouTube and search Barton Webinar, or you can go to bartonwebinar.com, and there's a link to our YouTube channel there. And then you can go in and search keywords with Barton Webinar and usually find answers. So let's try to keep rapid firing through these questions here. So Rosario, how many days between fasting? I fasted for 3 days in March for the first time. When can I fast again?
Anytime you want. If you want to skip 1 day and eat something and then start fasting again, you're okay with that. If you want to wait a month and fast 3 days again, it's okay. It's all okay. The more you have an empty stomach, the better. Period. There's no way around that. You make a hunger hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin, people think of it like that's what makes your stomach growl. And yeah, it does actually. That's part of it. It's repairing all your intestines and cleaning out your bowels. But that hormone is really important, and you don't get it if you put something in your stomach, anything, even water. So people, when they're fasting and they're sipping water all day long, or they buy a $250 fasting kit, and they get to have a little nut bar and then some little chips, kale chips, and then a little minestrone soup and and then they have this drink with the glycerin drink in it so that they have sweet in it, right? Guess what? They're not getting the benefits of fasting. They're not getting all the benefits they could get from fasting because they're putting stuff in their stomach. So the more you have an empty stomach, the better.
Excellent. All right. Brian missed a couple months of these webinars, and he's been seeing a lot of marketing about the pancreas, and that it needs to be detoxed. Is that a marketing thing, or is that legit?
It's a total marketing thing. So let's talk about detox of the pancreas. When you have an empty stomach, what does the pancreas do?
Nothing.
And then what's that doing? That's detoxing your pancreas. That is like everything repairs, everything resets. So like between meals, everybody says that you should have 5 small meals a day. They're still teaching this in nutrition school, 5 small meals a day with snacks in between. So you never have an empty stomach and never get low blood sugar. That is the worst advice. Because what's happening? Your pancreas is working constantly to try and pump out all these enzymes and to try and neutralize all the acid and all the stuff that the pancreas has to do, and it never gets a break. And so really what you want to do is give your pancreas a break. And it's really simple. just have an empty stomach. So if you keep 5 hours between meals with no snacks in between, you can drink water. Pancreas doesn't have to process water. So during that time, when you first eat, the acid goes up, and then after 3-4 hours, the acid comes down, and then your pancreas doesn't have to make any enzymes, and it can reset. So it resets the whole system, allows your stomach to make acid and enzymes, allows your pancreas to make bicarbonate and enzymes, and then it all shuts down, and then you eat again. So the 2 meals a day with 5 hours between the meals, or 8 hours between the meals, that's great. And then nothing after that. And so having an empty stomach, a couple times a day, that's how you fix your pancreas.
All right. So Vaughn, he's a little frustrated. He's been on our plan for several months. He got his A1C down to 5.9, but he just went back to just went back to the doctor, and it was back up to 7.4. So she put him back on Januvia, Linocypril, because blood pressure was at 160 to 100, and atorvastatin because my cholesterol was up. This setback was a surprise. He's very frustrated. Worst of all, protein level in my urine was above the chart. I want to know what I'm doing wrong, or am I a person that this program just won't work for?
No, it worked. It worked. That's the point. So go back to the beginning. We've had several people do this. Go back to the beginning, start all over. So what you didn't have is you didn't get your insulin sensitivity up high enough. So you were still insulin resistant. You started eating again. And so, of course, your blood sugar came up because you're still insulin resistant. So it may require that you exercise, and it may require that you fast. But the protein in your urine is not something that you should let it go. Don't let it go. This is really important. And it is important that you get your insulin resistance down. And the problem with the medication you're given, it causes more insulin resistance. It's going to make you worse. So none of those medications, wait a minute. I'm not going to tell you not to take your medications, talk to your doctor, but I'm going to tell you that they're not going to help you. They're a short-term solution for a long-term problem, and they cause long-term problems. They're a short-term solution that causes long-term problems. Put it that way. So, and really all you need to do is become insulin sensitive. So you can do the program to become insulin sensitive, and it's just going to take longer because you got your hemoglobin A1C down to a non-diabetic range, 5.9. That's non-diabetic, but it's still a little insulin resistant. We need to go to 5.4. So just keep going until you get to 5.4. And if you seem to plateau, then fast for 3 days. It takes 3 days to switch your enzyme to fat burning metabolism. So that would be another option.
All right. Lots of good questions to pick from. Let's do this one. During fasting, does it still work as fasting, or is it considered fasting if I consume chicken broth along with the water?
If your stomach is empty, you're fasting. So chicken broth will clear out of your stomach fairly quickly. So within an hour or so, it's probably gone if you drink, 8 to 16 ounces of chicken broth. And so that's okay. I've had people do 30 days of broth and completely reverse their diabetes in only 30 days. And that's all they had was broth, because the broth clears out pretty quickly. So again, same kind of thing though, twice a day, morning and night, you have broth, and that's okay, but it's not fasting. And it does break the fast. And so some people, they're okay with the broth. But in between times you're fasting, because you're going to have an empty stomach between times, then that's still good. You get all the benefits for that. And then you can choose to do that for a longer period of time, and you get all the benefits for it. So it's not bad.
All right. Carlos has burning sensation in both feet throughout the day. A1C is 6.7. What can I do to get it below 6? I suppose, what can you do to get rid of the burning sensation too?
Okay, so do phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit. Get your insulin resistance down. That's the key. If you want your nerves to start working again, it is imperative that that you're very insulin sensitive, because the high level of insulin prevents glucose from getting into the nerves. It can't cross into the nerves because there's glucose transport proteins are diminished. So you actually have less energy going to your nerves as long as you have insulin resistance. So the problem is not your blood sugar. The problem is insulin resistance. So measuring your insulin might be really helpful to understand that. So getting that hemoglobin A1C down to 5.2 would be one way of assuring that you're not insulin resistant. And then you might want to add something to repair the nerves, like Nervala. Nervala has just 2 vitamins in it, benfotiamine and alpha lipoic acid. Alpha lipoic acid is not technically a vitamin, but it is it is a nutrient supplement, antioxidant, and that can help improve the circulation and improve the blood vessels and improve the nerves. But you still have to get your insulin sensitivity up, because if you don't get energy to the nerves, then they're not going to repair.
All right. Lori was recently put on basal insulin because of very high blood sugars. That doesn't seem to make sense to me if I'm insulin resistant, like I believe I am.
Okay, so you can't go by belief. You have to go by knowledge. So the way you're going to get knowledge is you're going to do 4 tests. You're going to do on 1 blood sample, you're going to do an insulin, a hemoglobin A1C, a C-peptide, and blood sugar. And so the blood sugar and A1C are the short-term and long-term for the sugar, and then the C-peptide insulin are the short-term, long-term. But then the reason you need C-peptide is because that's what's telling you if your pancreas is putting out the insulin. If you're injecting insulin, then the insulin is going to show up, and you may have long-acting insulin and high insulin. But you need to know how high the insulin is too, even if you're injecting it. So that's going to measure what you're injecting, and the C-peptide measures what your pancreas makes. So you still need all 4 of those tests so that you can know that if you find the C-peptide is 0, your pancreas is not making insulin, and you may need that insulin. So that there's no way to know unless you actually do the tests, and then you'll know.
What was the 4th test? I got insulin, A1C, C-peptide, and
A1C, C-peptide, and glucose.
Glucose. Okay. Got it. All right. Let's see. Scrolling through here. How often do you need to take the C-peptide and other tests?
Well, as often as you need to. Actually, I generally only do it once. You don't need to repeat it, because when somebody gets their hemoglobin A1C, the purpose for the C-peptide is to determine if your pancreas is working or not. If you have diabetes because your pancreas isn't working, that's a totally different issue than if you have an insulin level of 60. That's like they're way different treatments. And so once you find out what the problem is and you get the right treatment, then you can just follow the blood sugar and say, okay, how's my blood sugar?
All right. Let's see. So many questions. So many good questions. Let's get one back down here. So when you're fasting, do we continue taking medications?
Okay. Generally, the answer is no, because when you're fasting, if you're taking a medication to lower your blood sugar and you're fasting, then you're going to just get too much hypoglycemia. And that's really uncomfortable and not always safe. So that's probably a good idea. You're probably going to get your blood pressure down to normal. So blood pressure medications aren't a good idea. And you certainly don't need cholesterol medications anyway. So it depends on the medication. some people are taking thyroid because they don't have a thyroid. Okay, then you need thyroid whether you're fasting or not. If you have, I had someone in this morning that has epilepsy, has epileptic seizures. And so if you have a seizure disorder and you don't stop taking it because you're fasting, right? That's not what you do. So you have to be reasonable and look at why you're taking the medicine and what it's used for, and determine if you need that. So being careful of things that will lower your blood sugar when you're fasting and lower your blood pressure when you're fasting, because those will make you miserable.
Yeah. Just a reminder, this is general information and everyone should check with their own healthcare practitioner about medications or whatever, but that would be a good idea to tell them they want to fast.
Don't listen to me.
All right, Jeannie, how much Synachroma can you take? I haven't had much success with it. Getting discouraged. I've been diabetic for 30 years and I'm not under control now. What are some reasons that Synachroma might not work?
Okay. So, so as far as I'm concerned, throw away the Synachroma and start doing phase 1 of the diabetes solution kit. And the reason I say that is because it sounds to me like you are trying to rely on Synachroma as if it were a drug, as if it were going to fix you, as if it were a magic pill. There's no magic pill. You just have to detox. And if you're going to detox by doing phase 1 of the program, that's a great way to detox. And if you're not in control, then you're still toxic and you still need to detox. You may need to know if your insulin is working, if your pancreas is working, and doing those 4 tests, the blood glucose, hemoglobin A1C, insulin, and C-peptide. And if you find those tests are that you have like high insulin and high glucose, then you're insulin resistant. And then you just need phase 1 of the program. If you find you have high glucose and very low insulin or no insulin, then you need insulin. So you don't have type 2, you have type 1. So knowing what you have, first of all, and then treating it appropriately is second of all. And there's nowhere in there that Synachroma fits. Synachroma is a support for making sure you have adequate nutrition so that you can use the program well.
All right, we had 2 people that asked a very similar question. They used all caps, so it looks like they're yelling at me here. So I think we better answer them. But I think you already did earlier, so this will be our last question of the day. Is intermittent fasting safe for type 2 diabetics?
That's like the question, is chelation therapy safe for people with lead toxicity? Is taking blood pressure medication safe for people who have high blood pressure? You have to look at it as what it is. What is type 2 diabetes? It's toxicity. If you had a bunch of lead, would I say, well, you need to keep your lead, keep eating the lead, that's good for you, keep eating the paint, and I'll give you a medication so that you can, so that your arthritis isn't so bad because of your lead toxicity. Things like that just don't make sense. Is intermittent fasting safe for type 2? That is detoxing safe for people who are toxic. That's intermittent fasting is just detoxing. And you're toxic if you have type 2. So I'm sorry if I'm being sort of sarcastic, because that's what our whole program is about, is to detox. And so the idea of safety, it is not safe to have type 2 diabetes. That's probably the best answer.
That is a great answer. All right. Thank you, Dr. Saunders. I'll let you go.
Okay.
See you next time.
All right.
All right. Yeah, so thanks everybody. A lot of good questions that we didn't get to today. My apologies, but we just ran out of time. Dr. Saunders has patients to go see. And so I hope you found this hour of our webinar useful and helpful. And we do this every Wednesday at noon, well, 1 o'clock Central Time. Yeah, 1 o'clock Central Time. If you're not registered, just go to bartonwebinar.com and there's a place to register right on the page there. And we also have Dr. Saunders does a heart health webinar every Thursday at noon Central Time. So you can join for that one tomorrow as well every week if you have any heart issues or questions. And so I didn't see any other questions here that I feel comfortable answering myself. So we're just gonna say thanks everybody and come back next week. And also, yeah, go check out our the archive of webinars that we've got posted on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search Barton Webinar. And if you have a keyword or a question, then the video should pop up towards the top and then you can watch some more. But it's really important to continue educating yourself, learning what you can, getting that knowledge, and then like experiencing the improved health and energy and all of that you experience as you implement these things. So like the author of the book of James said, faith without works is dead. So you have to believe this stuff, but you also have to practice it and put it into practice and do what it says to experience that. So that's more of a life principle than anything. So, and we're here to help you guys get unstuck, answer questions. If you have struggles, we help you get through those things. And just know, like, nobody's perfect. And, you know, you might have some bumps in the road. You might come home from a trip to India, like Ronnie did, and experience like stumble a little bit over sugars again. But just, hey, you can make the decision right now to get back on track and make good choices. And, you know, again, read through the Diabetes Solution Kit, look at the recipes in here, watch more webinars, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You're going to continue to see improvement. And I hope you guys are feeling better all the time. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us, and God bless. We'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. And no, I'm not actually Leslie. She'll be back next week. She is enjoying a week off with her family. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.